Hey everyone, what's up? My name is Steele Johnson. If you're new to this channel, thank you for watching. Welcome. Be sure to subscribe down below for more photography and videography filmmaking content in the future. Around this time last year, I spent a lot of time traveling. I went to London, I went to Madrid, I went to Montreal, and this was all right before the pandemic hit. And I was on my diving tour, diving circuit, getting ready for the Olympics coming up. And while I was on these trips, I wanted to take photos. So while I was there, I made a couple videos doing street photography with a Canon 80D, and I also took a bunch of photos with my iPhone XS. While I was street shooting, I was mixing up the photography about 50% using the iPhone and 50% using a Canon 80D. And I wanted to compare to see if having an iPhone was good enough for my purposes of street photography, or if I would be happier using a DSLR camera. So a year ago, I made one of the videos focused on the DSLR. You can check that up in the corner right now. But I never did anything with the iPhone photos because I took the photos, the pandemic hit, things got crazy, and they kind of got lost on a hard drive and I forgot about them until now. So now that it's been over a year since I took these photos, let's take a look at them and see if an iPhone really was good enough for me as someone who's not actually a street photographer, but just enjoys photography. Going back through these photos, I don't love them. If I'm being honest, I do prefer the shots I got with my DSLR camera to the ones I got with my iPhone XS. With the DSLR, I personally just felt more creative. I felt like I could think of composition in a more interesting way. With the iPhone, you're stuck with a wide-angle lens. You can crop in 2 times to that telephoto, but you lose a lot of quality, so I don't ever do that. Going into those trips and doing those street photos, I thought I was going to prefer the iPhone camera to the DSLR because I've had that Canon 80D for 5 years now. I was using a cheap 50mm lens. This had a newer camera. This had, better color science than that old Canon 80D, or so I thought. So in the moment, I enjoyed taking photos with the iPhone more. I thought at the time I was getting better compositions, I was happier. But a year has passed and I look back and I'm so much happier with the shots from an actual camera. That being said, there were 2 shots in particular that I thought were my best shots from the entire trip, both between the 80D and the iPhone, and it's these 2. The shot of the guy riding the bike down the street in Madrid. It's not necessarily in focus. I caught him mid-blink, so his eyes are kind of shut, but there's something about the colors in this composition that I love so much more than any shot I got from my 80D. It's not necessarily a photo that I think is print-worthy or a photo that I would put on a portfolio, but out of all the photos I took, especially on the iPhone from that trip, it's one of my favorite photos. And this photo is from London. I had a 12-hour layover there, and so we went and did some street shooting in the city, and it was just a yield sign or a workers ahead sign that was tipped over. I thought it was a unique composition, and a year later, I'm still very happy with this shot. I think the colors look great. I think the composition is interesting for the scene being not necessarily something that is naturally interesting. But if I'm being honest, those are the only 2 shots from the iPhone that I got between my trip to London and Madrid that I'm really happy with. There's some cool landscapes, there are some cool architecture shots, but nothing from the iPhone is anything I would ever put in a portfolio for photography. So does that mean the iPhone is a bad camera for street photography? Absolutely not. This camera is amazing. The fact that it could just fit in my pocket, I could pull it out, get shots that I was happy with, especially at the time, that's all that matters to me. A lot of these shots were not for a client or for a customer or for a portfolio or for print. They were just for my own personal sake. They were for my Instagram stories. They weren't for anything other than to document travel. And so with that being said, the iPhone is a great camera when you have nothing else. But for me personally, looking at these photos that I had lost and I found now a year later, it doesn't compare to even a cheap Canon 80D with a cheap 50mm lens. Sure, I can get more in the frame, but I'm not as happy with it. And so that's the story of the photos that I lost from London and Madrid iPhone street photography videos. I know this is my second iPhone street photography video on this channel. I'm not a street photographer. I live in a small town where there is not really much to shoot in terms of street photography, but this channel is something I created so that I could document where I'm starting as a photographer, as a videographer, as a filmmaker, and I want to document my growth. I have a lot of things with photography and videography that I want to get better at, that I need to get better at if I want to do this as a career. Things I want to grow in are composition, editing, and portraiture. I am an awful editor when it comes to photo. I don't have a style. Like most people tell you, you need to find your style, find your niche. I feel like every time I edit a photo, it changes drastically. And so something I want to work at on this channel this year is to grow in editing my photos, whether it's on film or whether it's on digital or an iPhone. Composition is something I spent a lot of time in film school learning about and practicing, and I feel like I'm okay at it, but there's a lot of room for growth. In portraiture, I don't ever take portraits. I personally don't love taking portraits, but if I want to be well-rounded, taking photo portraits is also going to help me as a filmmaker going forward. So if you want to support me as I grow as a photographer, as a filmmaker, hone in on my skill, my craft, be sure to subscribe, like this video if you enjoyed it, and let me know in the comments if you think the iPhone XS is a good enough camera for street photography, or if you think there are better options that are around the same price. So that's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time.